Hello.
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 Hi. How are you all?
Well, good.
Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Writers to Watch. I'm Virginia Stanley.
I'm Lainey Mays.
And I'm Grace Caternolo.
And we are the Library Marketing Department at HarperCollins, also known as Library Love Fest team. And we're happy to be here. And we're happy to have these four amazing authors. I cannot believe this embarrassment of riches. How cool is this? Excuse me. We're all in for a treat tonight with these authors and to hear about their books. So before we get to them, we'll turn their cameras on and have them each tell you about their book. You know how this goes. We have the authors talk, then we bring them all on, and then we ask you to ask questions of them and just type them in, and we will ask the authors your questions. So don't be shy. Do we have anything we want to talk about before we start? Is there anything coming up that we need to let them know about? Writers to Watch, Gala Gab Fest. I don't know.
Halloween is happening, but that's
Oh,
not work related.
it's not.
No, I mean we have a Gala Get Fest for November on the 7th, I believe. But check our events to double check me. And yeah, that's our next event coming up. It'll be fun.
And that's when the three of us sit around and gab about galleys, hence
Yeah,
the name.
November
All
6th,
right.
2 p.m.
What? What'd you say,
November
Grace?
6th, 2 p.m.
November
Thank
6th,
you, Grace.
Gotcha.
6, 2 p.m. Oh my God, November, such a strange month. Okay, with us today are authors Joseph Finder, Gillian McAllister, Nnedi Okorafor, and Maud Ventura, and they're going to talk to us about their amazing books. So good, each so different and each so wonderful. But first we're going to hear from Nnedi. So, Lainey, take it away.
Yes. Welcome. Hi, Nnedi, how are you?
I am fine. Hold on. Did I come on?
Yeah, we see you, we hear you.
Okay, great. Hello,
Okay.
everyone. Um,
Hi.
should I just start
Oh,
or?
I'm just going to do a quick
Oh,
intro
yeah.
and then I'm going to
Okay.
hand it over. I have to talk about all of your wonderful accolades, if that's okay. So I want to welcome Nnedi Okorafor, author of multiple award-winning and New York Times bestsellers, including the Benti trilogy, Who Fears Death, and Lagoon, currently in development at Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. She's won every major prize in speculative fiction, including the World Fantasy, Nebula, and Eisner Awards, multiple Hugo Awards, and the Wole Soyinka Prize for Literature in Africa. Born in Cincinnati to Igbo Nigerian immigrant parents, she now resides in Phoenix, Arizona with her daughter. And we're very excited to have you, and I can't wait to hear more about Death of the Author. Take it away.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. And so Death of the Author is many things, two in particular, which is why it has two covers. So you've got, this is the deluxe edition. Ooh, ah.
That's so cool.
Yes, it is. It's beautiful. So Death of the Author is a literary Nigerian American family saga set in Chicago, mostly in Chicago, that is loosely and strongly based on my family. And it's a post-human robot fable. So Death of the Author it's a braided narrative that is very, very self-aware. So Zelu, our main character, is a paraplegic woman who is part of a big, very robust Nigerian American family. And this means that despite being in her 30s and the second oldest child of 6 siblings, her family has a lot to say and is in control of a lot of her life. The community, this is the community, the family, which comes before the individual. That's the culture. So Zelu smokes weed, enjoys attractive men, but never for long. Relationships aren't her thing. She blurts her mind. She barrels through her life on her own terms. And all this makes her sort of a black sheep of her family, despite having an MFA in creative writing. She's more than a bit directionless. She wrote a novel, but it continues to be rejected everywhere. She's an adjunct creative writing instructor at a university, and she barely makes ends meet, whereas her siblings are doctors, engineers, and lawyers. And let me remind you that amongst Nigerians, there are 4 careers: doctor, engineer, lawyer, and failure. So this story begins in Trinidad at a wedding, at the wedding of her younger sister. And during this celebration, Zelu gets a phone call from her department head telling her that she's been fired from her adjuncting position for being a bit too honest with a student during a critique session. And then a little bit later on the same exact day, she gets an email from her literary agent telling her that her novel has been rejected yet again. So that night, in the ruins of her very pathetic, deteriorating life, high from smoking a blunt and emotionally low, sitting in her wheelchair, her laptop on her lap, she starts writing something very, very unlike the dry, haughty creative writing program taught fiction she normally writes. And it's a novel about robots. And this book goes on to change Zelu's life and so much more. And she titles this book, Rusted Robots. In a Nigeria long after human beings have gone extinct, are those humanity has left behind. They call themselves automation, and they're very tribal: the bodiless AIs, the humanoid Humes, and other machines. And the automation are about to go to war. So woven throughout Death of the Author are chapters from Zelu's Rusted Robots novel. So in that novel, you'll follow Ankara, the Hume robot, and Ijele, the AI. Death of the Author is named after the essay by French scholar Roland Barthes of the same name, The Death of the Author. It's an essay that argues that the author and the author's work should be independent. A quote from the essay is, "The birth of the reader must be at the cost of the death of the author." This is an essay that I've always hated. And when you consider the debate about AI today and the conversation that is wrapped around the dynamic conversation that is, my cats are fighting right next to this computer as we're talking. Oh boy, okay. But as you consider this dynamic conversation, this becomes that much more important. This conversation about AI and creativity is woven into the novel's very DNA. It's zeros and ones. Death of the Author is about death, the complexity of culture, immigrants, and the next generation, disability, ability, machines, AI, gun ownership, creative writing, the space race, and so much more. And at its heart, it's about the power of humanity's greatest creation, storytelling. And the novel has a heck of an ending. This is easily the most personal novel that I've ever written, and I can't wait for you all to read it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And somebody commented, Kim, our librarian friend, said, "I am floored by this book. So many genres, food, crazy family, robots." We already have big fans chiming in. And you have so many wonderful quotes for this book coming in as well. I mean, you have, let me pull them up. You have Ursula K. Le Guin. You have George R.R. Martin, who said, "Don't be frightened by the title. The author is fine, doing her best work yet." Reads like 3 novels in one, or maybe 4, about family and fame, culture and change, and the power of story, the writer's life, and robots. It has it all. I mean, it's just so cool. And I have to tell you, we went to a conference and we had galleys, and I wish I had on camera because we turned it over to show the other cover, and we just a collective ooh and then grab. And so it's just such an amazing work with so many layers. So I'm so excited for, if they haven't already read it, to read it. And thank you for telling us more.
Pleasure.
We'll see you in a minute. And I think I'm passing off to Grace.
Yeah, thank you, Lainey. I'm very excited to introduce Maud Ventura. Maud, you can join us on screen. Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here. I know it's later in the evening for you. So thanks for making time for us today. And I'm gonna give a little bit about you before letting you tell everybody about your book. And I will say there's no cover yet, but we are anxiously awaiting it. So that's why it is not on the screen. But a little bit about Maud. Maud lives in Paris. Before devoting herself to writing full time, she led the podcast division of one of France's major radio stations. My Husband, her first novel, was a #1 bestseller in France, and she has been translated into more than 15 languages. And I just want to say I loved My Husband. I read it in one sitting. It was actually possible to put down. I know everyone says that about every book, but this is one of those where like I just could not stop reading it. And every person I've given it to has told me how much they loved it. So go read My Husband in anticipation for your newest book, Make Me Famous. So tell everybody about your forthcoming novel.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be able to talk with you all the way from France and all the way from Paris, where I live. My debut novel was published 2 years ago in the US. It was called My Husband, and I'm now ready to start a new chapter with my second novel, which is called Make Me Famous. It was actually published in France late August, so 2 months ago, and it will be published in the US in May, if I'm correct. And Make Me Famous tells the story of a rise to fame. My character is called Cleo Louvain-Johnson. Cleo grew up in Paris. She is French-American. And since she was a child, she has had only one obsession: to become famous. And she will be a singer. Indeed, she has an amazing voice. She plays the guitar, she plays the piano, she even starts writing her own songs. And most importantly, Cleo is ready for anything to get things done. So to everyone's surprise, but herself, Cleo does become a global pop star. So her mother is French and her father is American, which means she can speak fluent English. Contrary to me, she does not have an accent, and she decides to move to the States to pursue a career in the music industry, living in New York, then in Los Angeles, racking up millions of dollars and awards, of course. And if I may just read the first few sentences of the book, I think it will set the tone very clearly. Fame is my life, the life I knew I would have, the life I made sure to have. Was I prepared to be so successful? Of course I was. I always believed that what the future had in store for me wasn't just an existence, it was a destiny. I might as well admit it, I got my hands dirty. At my level, everyone has skeletons in the closet. Anyone who claims otherwise is a liar. At 32, I am on top of the pyramid and I got there all by myself. I don't believe in luck. I owe my success to hard work, talent, and meritocracy. If I'd been able to be honest, the last time I won an award, I would have thanked only one person during my long speech at the ceremony: myself. So Make Me Famous is a first-person narrative, which means that the reader has access to all the inner thoughts of my character, to all her stream of consciousness. That's my promise to the reader. You are in her head, you are in her body, you are one of the most famous singers in the world, and you actually taste fame, what it feels like to have hundreds of people waiting for you in front of your hotel, or having people screaming your name and touching your body, and what it does to your ego as well, or what it feels like to be on stage in front of thousands of people. And that's what's so magical about literature. It's that you get to live another life. In movies, in painting, or in music, You don't get to actually know and feel another existence from the inside. In my book, Make Me Famous, I hope you get to live a life that none of us will probably ever experience, the uncanny experience of being crazy famous. Make Me Famous is about the music industry, it's about pop culture, it's about the compromises you have to make in order to be successful. It's about ambition, it's about money, it's about friendship, it's about art. How do you stay an artist writing your own song when you're also a product of marketing worth millions of dollars? And most of all, Make Me Famous is about our obsession with fame. And fame isn't something superficial. It's not only about the glitters and the clothes and the parties. Fame is a literary object, and it has been forever. In the Iliad, Achilles had two options, and he said he'd rather die young but gain glory on the battlefield rather than go home and live to old age. He chose fame because fame is one of the many answers of the big question: what does it mean to live your life fully? My book is called Make Me Famous. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Maud. We already have comments from people saying that they're excited for this one. And it is on sale in May 2025, May 6th. So thank you so much. I'm going to pass it off to Virginia.
Hi, sorry, my computer's having a slow day. That was wonderful. I was just thinking how much, how much complex, layered dimension is brought to these books by having the authors on. Really, that was wonderful. Nnedi and Maud, they were fantastic. It just brings more color to the book. It's just wonderful. Now it's my honor to bring Joseph Finder onto the screen to talk about his book, The Oligarch's Daughter. Joseph, are you there?
I am. Hold on.
Okay.
Good.
You just,
Am I here now?
yep, you are.
Excellent. Excellent.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited to talk to you. Thank you again for coming on to talk to librarians about your new book. And the first book with HarperCollins, which, as I said to you before, is we're thrilled. I mean, throw that word around a lot, but really, we're thrilled to have you at Harper. So thank you so much for being here.
I am thrilled to be at Harper, as I've told you, as I've told everybody. Everyone I've worked with has been terrific, so I'm thrilled.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we're a good team.
Yes.
Okay, so a little intro, and then I will turn it over to you, Mr. Finder. You are the New York Times bestselling author of 16 previous suspense novels, including House on Fire, The Fixer, and Suspicion. 2 of your novels have been adapted into major motion pictures: Paranoia, starring Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman, and High Crimes, starring Ashley Judd and Morgan Freeman. 4 more have won the industry's top Best Novel awards: Killer Instinct, which won the International Thriller Writers Award; Buried Secrets, which won the Strand Critics Award; Guilty Minds, the Barry Award; and Company Man, the Barry Award. Joseph Finder lives in Boston, Massachusetts. His new book, forthcoming book, comes out in January, is The Oligarch's Daughter, which is a breakneck thriller that marries the dynastic opulence of Succession with the tense and disorienting spycraft of The Americans. Stephen King says, any new novel by Joseph Finder is a ticket to reading pleasure, and this one is hands down his best ever. Coming January. Pick it up. Pretty cool. That's wonderful. And it is coming out January 28th, 2025. So excited. And Mr. Fender, I turn it over to you to tell us what you want us to know about The Oligarch's Daughter.
Okay, so this is the first time I will be talking about this book, which is interesting because I have, unlike, when you're at the end of a book tour, you've got everything memorized and you can sort of talk without thinking pretty much. I'll be sort of stumbling around in the next couple of minutes as I talk about the book. So two different ideas came to me when I was working on The Oligarch's Daughter. And the first idea was a guy who's in hiding living under a different identity. And this is sort of a classic thriller premise back to the 20s and 30s. And I just thought it's a different world now where everything is digitally interconnected and CCTV cameras everywhere. And I thought, what would this be like? How would you really be able to disappear if you needed to? And the next thing I sort of backed into was, okay, so why does he need to disappear? What's he hiding from and why? And it immediately captured my imagination. I have a friend who has a woman friend who married the son of a Russian oligarch, and it just transformed her life. There were guards all over the place, security. It was a completely different world, and I just wondered, so what would that be like? And then, because, I have written spy novels before, I thought, wouldn't US intelligence become interested in this? So the basic idea is Paul Brightman is a man on the run, living under an assumed name in a small New England town with $1 million bounty on his head. And when his security is breached, Paul is forced to flee into the New Hampshire wilderness to evade Russian operatives who can seemingly predict his every move. Now, there are two timelines in the book. The other one is this. 6 years ago, Paul was a rising star on Wall Street who fell in love with a beautiful photographer named Tatiana, unaware that her father was a Russian oligarch and the object of considerable interest from several US intelligence agencies. So now, to save his own life, Paul must unravel a decades-old conspiracy that extends to the highest reaches of the government. So it is, in some ways, a love story. Paul falls in love with Tatiana. I loved writing Tatiana. And it's more of a love story than I've ever done before, frankly. I also was interested in what a big Russian family is like. And they tend to be warm and enveloping and suffocating in some ways. And so I wanted Paul, who comes from a very different background, to be brought into this family and to be, in many ways, taken by it, in many ways seduced by this family before everything falls out of his control and he has to go on the run for reasons I'm not going to tell you right now. You have to read the book. So that's the basic idea behind The Oligarch's Daughter.
Yeah, I have to say, from page one, you're just drawn right in, again, without the two timelines. And it doesn't start out feeling like it's this sort of, thriller, it doesn't go there at all until it does. And then by then you're completely into what's going on here, and just him trying to, I don't want to give away too much. I don't want to say anything, but at the same time, it's like, as I'm reading it, I'm like, he's rowing in this truck. He's going through the woods and it's just so good and it's so hard to talk about. But I have to say, it's from page one, you're just so taken in and it doesn't go where you think it's going to go. I think that's what I can say very, very safely without feeling like
That's
I'm
fair
ruining it.
enough. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll go now to our next author, and then we'll all come back after the last two authors have spoken. So thank you very much, Joseph.
Thanks, Virginia.
Hi. Okay, I'm going to welcome Gillian McAllister onto the screen.
Hi.
Hello.
Hmm.
Hi, how
Hello.
are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you for staying up late with us. I know you're in the UK, so the timing's a little rough.
Yes, it's 10:30 here, so it's kind of
Okay.
wild to be on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay, I'm going to do a quick intro and then we're going to hear all about famous last words.
Of
So,
course.
Gillian McAllister is the New York Times bestselling author of Reese's Book Club pick Wrong Place, Wrong Time, Just Another Missing Person, and Everything But the Truth, also The Choice, The Good Sister, The Evidence Against You, and How to Disappear, and the Richard and Judy Book Club pick That Night. She graduated with an English degree before working as a lawyer, and you live in Birmingham, England, where you now write full time. And you're also the creator and co-host of the popular Honest Authors podcast. So I'm going to turn it over to you to hear all about famous last words. And oh, actually, before I do that, I have a really great quote from Emily Henry that I want to read. Gillian McAllister is one of my favorite authors working in the genre. McAllister is the best at putting her characters in impossible situations and making her readers not only contemplate, but feel what it would be like to find themselves in those situations. Great quote, and I want them to take that into this talk about the new book. So,
That is such a nice quote. Thank you for reading it. So Famous Last Words is coming in February 2025, and it tells the story of Cam and Luke. Cam is a literary agent and Luke is a writer, but he's also her husband. And one morning after maternity leave, Cam is getting ready to go back to work in the literary agency, and she wakes up and her husband isn't there. And this is not very unusual. He's an early riser, so she dismisses it. She goes to work as normal, but she can't get hold of him. And then in chapter 1, there is a breaking news alert in the foyer of her office. And it says that there's a hostage situation unfolding in central London, just down the street from where she works. And she thinks it's weird. She keeps trying to call her husband and text him, and the texts are not delivering. And she kind of knows something is wrong at this point. But she carries on working, and sure enough, 10 minutes later, the police arrive and they say that her husband is caught up in this hostage situation, but he is not a hostage. He is the gunman taking hostages. And they show her a video of, unbelievably, her optimistic, enthusiastic writer, terrible runner husband who has taken 3 hostages and put bags over their head and is pacing across the camera holding a gun. Famous Last Words tells the story of how on earth this could come to be, playing out this exploration of a marriage across a live hostage situation. And as this public act unfolds and the media get hold of it and they start live reporting on it, Cam thinks about the note that Luke left her that morning, which was relatively cryptic. It was his famous last words. And she starts to think, is she supposed to understand his writing in a way that is more than just because of the intimacy of their marriage? Is she supposed to be able to interpret his writing because he's a writer and she has always been his agent? I loved writing it. I had such fun writing such a contained, closed set hostage situation, but one where the main protagonist is not in the building and the reader doesn't know what's happening in there. I went on a hostage negotiation course myself to be able to write it, which I've actually used an awful lot of the techniques with my 2-year-old, which make of that what you will. But I had such a fun time writing this sort of part action thriller, part love story mashup. So that's Famous Last Words, and I really, really hope you enjoy it if you get an arc or if you pick it up come February.
Oh, thank you. That's really interesting. I have a million questions about hostage negotiation now that I
Yeah,
didn't
I
know that I
know.
had.
I feel like I hold some secrets to like how to like make people do things. It's quite interesting.
Oh, that'll come in handy in life and writing in the future. I'm very sure. Thank you. And I think we'll welcome everybody back. Okay. Virginia, good to come back on. Sometimes there's a little delay, technology. If not, we will get going. Okay. Well, thank you to everyone who spoke. And I mean, there's such great comments just pouring in about how great of an episode this is. I think everyone enjoys hearing from so many authors, and also just diving into these books and seeing a little bit early. I think we might want to start with, and I'm kind of curious, and it's a question for everybody, but writing, the way you write, they have pantsers and plotters, and I know there's very intricate plots at work here for all books, and so how you start, do you have an idea and it blooms from there, or do you kind of start at the beginning and you don't know where the ending's going to go? So maybe we start with Nnedi.
Yeah, I'm very much a pantser. I fly by the seat of my pants. I do not, when I sit down to write, I don't know what's going to come. I don't know if it's a novel. I don't know if it's a short story. I let it be. And I've learned to just let it be what it is. And I also don't write linearly. So I write backwards, inside out, whatever the story requires. And usually, where does a story start for me? It usually starts with character. I'm the type of writer where the characters speak to me, and they start talking, and then there's usually like one scene. It could be anywhere in whatever will be, and I'll just kind of go with that. And then by the time I finish that little scene, something else is lit up, and then I just keep jumping around, and then I bring it all together and edit over and over and over again. It's very chaotic, but works for me.
Joseph, what about you?
I'm in between pantsing and plotting. My stories are too complicated for me to completely riff, you know. But so what I do is I outline about the first, I don't know, 25% of the book. And when I hit that point, I just go. When I get to 25% in, the book takes over. And I no longer have to outline it. It sort of just comes out in the right way. So I do both.
I like that. And we'll just go in order. What about you, Maud?
I think my starting point is not a character, it's a theme. So I know I want to know more about fame because I feel like I have the intuition that it's something deeper and that it tells something about me, about the world, about people I know. And then I made up a character, a storyline, and a plot, but it's just an excuse to understand my theme deeper and to go deeper and deeper into what it's like to actually be famous. So I know where I am going, but at the same time, I don't know my story and I don't know how my story will end. and I'm really big into twist endings, and I don't know my endings when I start.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I realized I said in order, but to me, your screen might look different than mine. But yeah, Julie, go ahead, Julie.
I do a bit of both, but not in a very sensible or efficient way. So I do an outline, and it is very detailed. And then I write a first draft according to that outline. But then what happens for me during that first draft is I tend to have a kind of aha moment about what the novel ought to be. And it's nearly always when I've written nearly all of the draft. And then I do a second draft, which is like a rewrite according to what I've learned works in that first draft, which is relatively a small amount. And then I do a second draft, which is completely different. And that usually is the draft that kind of stands for me.
Oh, interesting. I feel like, I mean, everybody kind of does the same thing in a way. I feel like you said, start with something and then it totally can change. But I guess you have to open yourself up to what can happen, right? You don't know it all at the beginning.
Yeah. And I think
Well, I
you have
don't-
to be willing to listen to that voice that says this could be done a different way, and you have to be receptive to it. I think that's the main thing, whether you're doing that daily or whether you do it like I do, where you do like multiple big drafts that you kind of throw out.
it's gotta hit right, right? It's gotta feel
Yeah.
right. Yeah. There's a similar question, but I want to read it anyway. And this is for Joseph. Kim writes, Oligarch's Daughter has a bang of a beginning, which I feel the same way, which pulled me in instantly. Did you always envision it that way?
I knew I wanted to plunge us into the story sort of suddenly. I wanted to sort of bring us into this ordinary life, ordinary people, and then I wanted to sort of, boom, take us into this completely different storyline. And so I guess the answer is yes, I did think about I think a lot about how to begin my books. I think about how to end them as well, but I leave that decision for later in the process. Uh, so yeah, I thought a lot about the beginning, as it turned out. Yeah.
So did you not know how it was going to end when you started?
I didn't. In fact, I wrote like 3 or 4 different endings.
Oh.
And my editor didn't initially like the way the book ended and asked me to make a change, and we argued about it. And then, of course, it was right, annoyingly enough. But so I wrote a different ending, and it chimed. It worked a lot better with the book, as it turned out.
That's neat. Anybody else have anything similar, a similar experience with their latest? I mean, or I'm fascinated by that, just like, do you know how it's going to end? That's a curious thing, that part.
I mean, with my novel, I didn't know a lot of it. I mean, like I just was going. I was writing this story, and it was it's Zelu's story. It's about her family, and it's about Zelu. And she was writing this book. And it was this book about robots. And and I'm just talking about it as it's going along. It was not my intent to show the book, but like as the book was progressing, I realized I was like, I think I have to write a few chapters of this book. You can't just keep talking about it because it is so central to the story. And I remember thinking that this is a novel with no human beings in it. It is about robots in a post-human world. What the heck is that? How can I write that? I did not like the idea of writing that. But I knew I had to. So at some point I just kind of stopped and then started writing just a little bit of this robot narrative. And once I started, I loved it. I was like, oh, this is great. I was so into it, but it was not like, as I was writing this novel, I did not intend for this braided narrative. It just kind of grew out of it, which I'm kind of familiar with that whole thing of a story kind of taking over, and you have to follow that. It becomes something else that you never intended. So yeah.
Yeah, like the branches grew
Yes.
and the leaves formed, for sure.
Right.
Well, it's funny because someone in the comments said, so humans or rusted robots came first, which I felt is a very poetic way to say it. Very chicken and the egg.
Yeah, exactly. All
Okay.
linked.
More questions for our wonderful authors?
Yeah, I have a question for Maud. Was there a specific moment in pop culture that inspired you to write Make Me Famous, or one specific star that inspired Cleo?
Hmm. Not one in particular, but I'm really a big fan of pop culture. And to be able to write Make Me Famous, I had to be able to be very in tune with what's going on. So, and every 6 months there is a new pop star. So I feel Cleo somehow looks like Sabrina Carpenter. She has the same hair and the same attitude. But in 6 weeks from now, or in 1 year from now, maybe I will think about someone else. But she does not exist. She's fiction. And it was very important to me to invent a character that does not exist. But at the same time, she is very skilled and she writes her own song just like Taylor Swift. She has a deep voice just like Miley Cyrus or Dua Lipa, for instance. So sometimes you can have a hints of real people, but she's fiction.
I bet you had a really good playlist. Did you listen to a lot of different songs while writing?
Yes, I listen to Taylor Swift a lot while I am writing. Olivia Rodrigo, and some of the lyrics actually inspire me to write some chapters. And yes, pop music is a big part of the book, and I did listen to a lot of it. And it was important to me to enter this world and understand pop cultures and not write from the outside and not in a judgy way, especially.
Yeah, for sure. We have a question from Barbara Ringel. It says, was Famous Last Words, Gillian, based on any way in a real life situation you witnessed, or maybe on the news? Was there any inspiration from other cases?
Not really, but also a bit, which is to say that most hostage situations have a political agenda, I would say. And I actually wanted to write a situation that was an intimate version of that, but also where the hostage taker, the protagonist's husband, doesn't make any demand. You know, he's not taking hostages in an embassy. This is not, it's not kind of like those hostage kind of siege thrillers. And this is sort of what I sometimes like to do, is take an action thriller trope and apply it to a more intimate and sometimes female experience. So although there is a cordon and there are silent drills and, you know, there's a wiretapped phone, I really wanted to write about that with the backdrop of a marriage rather than a sort of thriller of like, let's get the hostages out alive. It's more kind of like, what would possess an ordinary family man to do this?
Okay. There is a question. Let's see. We're making sure we're getting to all the questions. Is everybody good? Lainey, Grace?
I see one for Joseph.
I saw one too. Now I can't find it. It's about the movie making.
Yeah, Cindy asked, when two of your books were made into major movies, were you involved? Did you get to meet the actors?
I wasn't involved in the sense that I wrote the screenplay or anything like that. But my first book that was made into a movie was High Crimes. And the director invited me to have a cameo in this movie. So I got to sort of act. I said act. I didn't act. I'm not an actor, but anyway, I got to be in 5 scenes with Morgan Freeman, and my character, in fact, beats him up. I didn't do it myself, but my character does. So I got to hang out on the set a lot for High Crimes. Paranoia, I met, Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman and Liam Hemsworth, but I wasn't, and I watched some of the filming, but I wasn't really on set that much. I mean, my feeling is that books and movies, a movie can be great. It's like a billboard for a book, as far as I'm concerned. But it's so different. And when I write my books, I write scenes that I know would never make it into a movie. They're too interior, and that's what we get to do as novelists. We get to sort of show the head, the interior, the thinking, which you can't do in a movie. So I sort of feel like I do what we can do better in a book.
Very, very cool. Lainey, I know you have one.
Yeah, it just makes me think of these. I've seen t-shirts that said, the book is better, but I feel like you
Book's
have to
always better.
sometimes, they're always better. But sometimes you have to think of them as very separate entities just because they're just so different, right? But
Right.
that's all I could think of what you're saying. that. I'm sorry, Grace, you pointed to me. What was I supposed to be? Which one?
Oh, I was just saying, I know you have a question for Nnedi.
Oh, yes. I lost it though. Hold on. I gotta find it. And then I
That
forget
happened to
it.
me before. I couldn't find my
So
Joseph. I couldn't find
go
my
ahead
Joseph.
and then I'll come back. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
I
Ask
got
Nnedi-
stuck on the book is
Can I
better
ask
and
Nnedi a question?
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So
Sure.
one of your books is in development right now at HBO, right? Do you know anything about it, or
Yes, I do.
tell us for a second? Yeah.
I actually have several things that are in development or have been at various phases of development. And so so the project with HBO, I was in the consulting position for that. And then I had another, my novella series, Binti, was at Hulu. And with that one, I was co-writing the screenplay. And then my series, Insibidi Script series, was with 20th Century Fox. And in that one, I was writing the screenplay. And then my novel Lagoon, we're developing that into a film with Amblin Entertainment. And that one, I'm writing the script. So it's like I've been in very different capacities. I've operated in different capacities with development, film and TV development. And it's been a lot of what you said. Yeah. The book is different than than the film or the TV series. It's very different, and it's a different beast. But I like to say that they're different. There are things that I think film can do that can't be done in books, and vice versa. I know my first love will always be long form prose. It's just, there's a magical element to it that just, but I'm biased, but I see them as two very different mediums of storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all pretty, you're in like a similar I think we all feel that way. Maud, we have a question for you from our friend Lillian. Asking what other themes you're drawn to, which is also a question I had after reading My Husband and Make Me Famous. You write a lot about obsession as well. Could you talk a bit about other themes you're into and why obsession may or may not be one of those?
Yeah, I really have to fall in love with the theme before writing a novel because I'm going to commit for 3-4 years of my life, and I've been fascinating with fame for 3 years. It was my entire life, and I have to be obsessed with it to be able to write about it. So maybe that's why my characters are so much into obsession. And for my first novel, it was the same. I wanted to understand what it was like to love too much. Can you love too much someone? And I was fascinated by it. And I wrote my husband. And I'm currently looking for a new obsession. And I am not currently writing because I can't find my subject, I can't find my theme, and I cannot write if I'm not really drawn into it and fascinated by it. So I'm really open to fall in love again with the subject. And I just hope that in a couple of days or weeks, I'm going to step into a subject, and it's like falling in love. You feel like it's the only subject, and you're like, but why isn't everyone writing about it? I should write about it. It's so important. It's so interesting. It's so fascinating. It's fun. It's profound. And you just find your subject. So I don't have a current obsession, but it's a part of my life that I am missing. I'm not writing, and I wish I wish I was. So hopefully very soon.
It'll come to you. I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to find something that just like sparks, and then you're excited to get to writing every day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I have somebody emailed me a question. I feel like I'm opening an envelope. So Gillian, the book is written in alternating POVs, point of views. I'm curious what informs your decision to use that technique, and in utilizing it, how do you decide when to switch voices?
I wanted to write, obviously, the protagonist of the hostage taker because that's the hook. And I also really wanted to write the point of view of the hostage negotiator because I really relate to what you say, Maud, about obsession, and hostage negotiation was my obsession for this book. And I've just delivered a different book on kidnap and ransom, which was my next obsession. So I really relate to that and the sort of feeling of like I want to actually write about a topic. And it kind of became a sort of cat and mouse thriller because their interests are not really aligned. The hostage negotiator wants to get everybody out. And if he has to kill the hostage taker, he will, and is authorized to do that. Whereas Cam wants her husband out alive and with an explanation. And so there becomes an interesting dialogue between her and the hostage negotiator because she doesn't want to tell him the full truth. For example, he asks her if her husband has a temper, and she lies because she says internally they will be more likely to shoot him if she tells the truth, which is that he does have a temper sometimes, like everybody. And in terms of when to switch, I feel like this is one of those instinctive things that your author brain kind of tells you. And I don't really know how it knows. I guess it's related to the reader instinct of just the feeling of, and now we're going to do this for a while. I wish I knew because then I could kind of write myself a how-to guide and I wouldn't have to do it wrong all the time and rewrite things.
Does everyone agree that there's just like another sense of when to switch timelines or perspectives? I don't know if anyone has. If you don't have anything to add, that's fine.
I found that I had to write each timeline separately just because I wanted to be in my character's head fully and not break out of it. So that meant that I had to sort of piece the book back together, and to try to create some sort of transition between the past and the present and make it make sense. And that was hard. It would have been a lot easier if I had sort of switched back and forth, I think. That's me.
I think it like depends on the story. Because some stories are, I feel like have to be told one way, and then some need to be told a different way. And then there's, yeah, that instinctive, I think that instinct, at least for me, is linked to me as a reader, because I think that most of us writers are big readers. So we know the feeling, that feeling of when a story needs to shift, and I think that we're listening to that voice over there, which I think is really, really necessary, is really necessary and useful.
Totally. Yeah.
So now we are 5 minutes. I mean, we don't have to stop, but we have several people here on a time zone, so we want to be respectful of time. But so we want to make sure that we've gotten to the questions. There are a few more. If you can bear with us, we're just really like one or two more. And so the last one we'll ask, and so we'll just say this so that you can think of it in your mind as we go, but don't answer it now, because I think we have one or two more, right, Lainey and Grace? I think there's one or two more. But the question that I'd like you to give some thought to is, what books, aside from yours, that are out in 2024, do you recommend people put at the top of their reading list? So I think that's kind of a cool question. So if you want to think about that for a second, I think there might be one or two more, and if I'm wrong, we can get right to that one. I'm not sure, because we've got many screens open. So Lainey, Grace, where are we at? Questions?
I kind of think we can combine one or two. Really, the last one from Casey and Kim are asking about death of the author specifically, and family, because you mentioned it was really personal. And so maybe if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, like how you drew on inspiration, and maybe how you didn't. I don't know.
That's for me, for
Yeah, that's if you feel comfortable
yeah.
answering. If not, no worries.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a heavy question. So yeah, death of the author. So the way that I started writing it, like I said, is very much about my family. I write, in the past have written like science fiction and fantasy, whatever, fine. But so Death of the Author is a novel that I wanted to write from the beginning of my writing career. And this was a story, or the type of story that my sisters and we wanted to tell. And we were because we're Nigerian American. My parents are born and raised in Nigeria, and they came here and came to the United States in 1969. And so we were raised here. And so we have a very Nigerian American background. And that means a lot. That's a heavy thing to say. Culturally, it's culturally hybrid in a very heavy way. My parents were taking us back to Nigeria to get to know our relatives and our culture from a very young age. And that had a deep impact on all of us. I have 3 siblings. And so we wanted to tell this story because we felt like there weren't enough narratives that were exploring what does it mean to be Nigerian American, all the contradictions, the melding of culture, all of that. What does that mean? And so we talked about this, and at the time, I wasn't ready to write that type of book. I wasn't ready to kind of go deep into it. So Death of the Author is me finally doing that. And the catalyst for that was the passing of my sister, who was 1 year older than me. It was sudden, it was unexpected, all of that. And I started literally writing Death of the Author 2 days after it happened. And so there was it was a sense of urgency to finally do this. So that's all over the book. Like that is very much a part of where this story came from, in really unexpected way, in expected and unexpected ways. So it's very close. That this novel is very, very close to me.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. That's really special. And people, they wrote and said, thank you for sharing personal story. It's going to resonate with a lot of people. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think we all share our appreciation for just sharing such a story that's so personal. There are so many questions and so much appreciation for all of you and your works and coming on and talking to all of us. And I think we've done our best to sort of blend the questions together. Jennifer Winberry has a question about, is there one author each of you loves to read? So I think maybe we'll end with that question melded with the question about like, what do you think other than your book, folks should put on their TBR list, put it at the top. Joseph, do you want to go first?
Sure. So can we just talk briefly about books that we were into this year in particular?
Yeah, think of us as librarians. This is Reader's Advisory for librarians. So if there's a book that you love, or an author that you love, or something that you're just like, oh my God, this blew my mind, you've got to read this.
So this will surprise people, because when I am not writing, I often don't read suspense. I read fiction, more literary fiction, and I love stories about families. I grew up in a family of 7, and it's one of the things that obsesses me. So I loved the book, The Interestings by Meg Wolitzer. That's just one of my favorite books now. And a book that is just coming out right now, which I loved, I got to read early, is a book by Susan Rieger called Like Mother, Like Mother. And I love that book. It's really terrific. So those are just 2 that came to mind right away.
The Interestings and Like Mother, Like Mother.
Like Mother, Like Mother by Susan Rieger.
I'll write these down for everybody.
Oh, thank you, Grace. That's so sweet. Will you put that in the chat so everybody can get them? Yep. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. I recently read a book. Well, I actually read it a year ago, but I also read early. So it's now out, called Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. And it's a very simple premise. A woman is home with her 2 young children, but otherwise by herself, and she hears an intruder's foot on the stairs. And it's very simply about what happens next. But almost the entire novel is played out closed set in the house, where they find a cavity behind their chimney breast, and they hide in there. And there's an amazing point about 30% in, when she's looking out through this cavity and she realizes she knows the intruder and she knows why he's there. And it was so fantastically scary and relatable, and it's a very feminist book. So that's Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. It's which is one of the most gripping books I've ever read. I had such a whale of a time with it.
Dang.
It's really good.
That's awesome. Thank you. Who's next?
I'll go. So I'm currently writing. So that's a complicated thing. And so this of course isn't new, but there are certain books that I always have on repeat because they're like they're just comfort reads, and there's a lot that I need to be comforted about right now. So what I have on repeat has been, it's Stephen King. Okay. I'm just gonna say it's Stephen King. And I love his Dark Tower books. I love the journey of it. I just return to that Dark Tower road, the beam, and following the beam, because that is my comfort place. So like recently, that's maybe yesterday, I just finished The Drawing of the Three for the millionth time. So there's that. The book that I'm going to pick up, it's a new, relatively new book. It's by Chigozie Obioma, and his The Road to the Country. That's my next read, and that's about the Nigerian Civil War. And as a Nigerian American, I can't get enough of books that are from that perspective, because I think that's every Nigerian, no matter what part of the world they live in, has that ghost of that Civil War over their family, over their past, me definitely included. So this is something, and I love him as a writer in general. He just, I love his books. So that's the new one that I'm about to dive into.
Wow.
I just want you to say my mom's comfort book is also the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. And growing up, I was always like, I don't understand, but so many people have said it. I'm like,
It is. I don't know. It just is.
what about you, Ma?
Most of the books I read are in French. So I'm trying to think of the last book I read in English. I think it was Intermezzo by Sally Rooney in September. I am a big Sally Rooney's fan. So I tend to buy a new book the day it gets out. So it would be Intermezzo. And my comfort book that I read all the time is The Art of the Novel of Milan Kundera, L'Art du Roman in French. And it's an essay in which Milan Kundera explains how he writes fiction and why he writes fiction. And I just love this book, and it's very helpful when I'm trying to write fiction as well.
Great. I just put all those in an Edelweiss catalog, so I will send that out to everybody. Thank you. Now I have
Wait,
more things to read.
what'd you say?
I said now I have more things to read, as if we all don't have endless piles of things to
Well,
read.
it's so funny because the librarians on the on the comments page is like, they're like, tell us what you're reading, and then they're like, oh, this is great. So you've done a great service to your librarians and ultimately to fellow readers, patrons everywhere. That's really great. I love that. It's just so I don't know, it just springs from the heart, and I love those sort of like, quick, you don't have to put a lot of thought into it. What just comes to mind, and what really hits your heart. So thank you for those. And I hope we've gotten to everybody's questions. I think that we have. Lady Grace, are we missing anything? Are we good? Can we let everybody go?
I think we're
lot of-
good.
A lot of really nice words, saying this was a superb episode and thanking you all for being here. And I know that Lainey, Virginia, and I want to echo that. That was a really great episode of Writers to Watch. So thank you.
It was. This was everything we had hoped it would be. You're also lovely and kind with your time and generous with your words, written and spoken. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We know that it's the first time that some of you have talked about your book, and that's really exciting for us too. And so again, we have The Oligarch's Daughter by Joseph Finder, which goes on sale January 28th. Make Me Famous by Gillian McAllister goes on sale February 25th. Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor goes on sale January 14th. And Make Me Famous by Maud Ventura goes on sale May 5th. And again, we thank you all so much for being with us tonight and for sharing your thoughts about your books and other people's books, which was really cool. So take care, and
Thank
we hope
you.
to see you again in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Take care. Good night, all.
All right.